Hello, good morning. Welcome to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church in Pasadena. Welcome to all members, friends, and guests here in person and virtually. Neighborhood Church creates and grows an inclusive community of faith connected by love, spirit, and service. My name is Mara Lepaluoto, and I'm pleased to be a member of your Board of Trustees. Today's service is led by our interim minister, Reverend Dr. Teresa Cooley, with music by guest keyboardist Stuart Elster and soloist Michael Fausto. Please take a moment to silence your devices as we begin our service. Thank you for joining us as we continue to prioritize connection over perfection in this hybrid service, which is streamed on YouTube and which we are recording for future viewing. Seating is available in the back for those who want to be sure not to appear in the recording. Based on our guidance from our COVID safety team, masks are required for congregants inside and optional outside. You'll find information on our website about the many ways to connect with our church community throughout the week, both in person and virtually. Please join us for the Coleridge-Taylor Celebration Concert on Friday, August 12th at 7 p.m. Also, rehearsals start tomorrow, August 8th at 7 p.m. for our Music Sunday service on August 14th, featuring Hiawatha's Wedding Feast, also by Coleridge-Taylor. Our last Living Our UU Principles, or LOOP, focus group is today after the service. Please note that it has been moved to Ross Chapel. Mark your calendars for a social justice history salon on Sunday, August 21st at 4:30 in Ross Chapel and on Zoom. Would you be interested in participating in a bereavement, caregiver, or divorce support group this fall? If so, contact Ann Grant by August 30th. And finally, we are seeking additional volunteers to facilitate our Whole Lives classes. It's easier than ever to become an OWL teacher as online trainings are now available. We are especially seeking teachers for 8th through 12th grades. I've taught OWL for several years, and it's one of the most meaningful things that I do. Please contact Matt Vasco if you're interested, and I'm willing to talk with anyone about my experience. Please see the newsletter, Sunday email, or welcome table for more information on these and other activities. Again, welcome to Neighborhood Church, whoever you are and wherever you are in your spiritual journey. Welcome to this inclusive faith community connected by love, spirit, and service.
Good morning. It's so great to be back with you and see so many familiar faces and also some new folks. So very, very happy to be here with you this morning. Our invocation comes from the Sufi mystic Hafiz. I sometimes forget that I was created for joy. My mind is too busy, my heart is too heavy for me to remember that I have been called to dance, the sacred dance of life. I was created to smile, to love, to be lifted up, and to lift others up. O sacred one, untangle my feet from all that ensnares, free my soul that we might dance and that our dancing might be contagious. Come, let us worship together.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our gathering hymn, number 298, Wake Now My Senses.
Giving is a spiritual practice through which we put our values into action. Each Sunday, our congregation dedicates 100% of contributions to a local social justice organization. This week, our gifts go to Essentia. Please give generously through our website, text to give, or the QR code or box available at the exit. If you wish to make a payment toward your pledge, please note in the subject line or use an envelope available in the box outside. Here to tell us about Essentia is Camille Guerrero, Director of Development.
Good morning, and thank you for welcoming me back on this Sunday morning. Katie, thank you again for inviting me to share about the mission of Essentia, which is lifting people out of homelessness, one person, one family at a time. That song was so beautiful and so poignant, and I asked Katie, I need to get a copy of it. The lyrics are powerful. Today I'm going to share about a testimonial, a success story that recently came through our doors, one of many, and her name is Anna. Thank you again for joining with me today to listen carefully to her story. It is one that is beautiful but rife with trauma. Today and every day, we serve some of the most vulnerable individuals in our community. I'm here to share the story of one that made it home. It wasn't one event that led to Anna becoming homeless. Since her early childhood, there had been many. The layers of trauma that Anna experienced during her young life severely altered the course of her life, ultimately driving her to make unhealthy choices, including turning to drugs and alcohol in order to cope. For as long as she could remember, housing insecurity plagued Anna and her family. Her upbringing was traumatizing, and she had no sense of having a lifeline as the physical, sexual, and emotional abuse went unseemingly unnoticed by those around her. Anna's father was extremely abusive, not just to her, but with her entire family. She recalled to her wellness case manager, Robert Smith, several times her father would come home and physically assault and beat her mother unconscious, and afterward vent his rage and anger on the rest of the family. Drug and alcohol use within the family became constant with her. Became constant with her father, expecting Anna to steal and sell drugs for him. If she refused, he would settle it with her like a man, though she was only around 6 or 7 years old at the time. At age 11, Anna's frustration with when I think about a child going through that as a mother, it just tears me up. At age 11, Anna's frustration with the constant abuse of drugs and poverty and housing insecurity came to a tipping point. That's when the primitive survival instincts, fight or flight, took hold, and Anna learned how to find what she thought were secure places in the Glendale, Los Angeles areas, at parks, under overpasses, as well as sleeping over friends' houses during her elementary and middle school years. The years that followed saw Anna's life become more and more fragmented as she depended on others for shelter, drugs to make it through. As she became an adult, Anna found herself homeless most of her time and was persistently buying and selling drugs. As the trauma increased, Anna, on more than one occasion, overdosed in an attempt to numb the pain of her reality. Her last conscious memory of one of such overdoses is when a paramedic was trying to bring her back to life after she was stabbed in her right lung. She heard one of the paramedics say, "There's nothing else we can do to save her." This frightening event proved to be a wake-up call for Anna, inspiring her to leave that broken, worn-down person behind on the sidewalk, only to become the survivor that she is today. Anna first became aware of Essentia through a therapist that she was seeing in the Lincoln Heights area where she lived, in a tent right around the corner from their offices. Our Glendale Street Outreach team was dispatched shortly thereafter. In August 2021, during another quarantine, Anna came to Essentia for help. It was then that she was connected with a case manager and began receiving wraparound care, including trauma therapy, occupational therapy, financial literacy, 3 meals a day, a safe and clean bed to sleep in, as well as what she called emotional support. With a whole new future ahead of her, Anna's transformational journey from street to shelter to now newly housed has begun. Today, through the services of Essentia, Anna has received an emergency housing voucher and is no longer homeless. She has recently moved out of the shelter and has been permanently housed in a 1-bedroom apartment in Glendale, received a beautiful welcome home basket, and continues to receive life-changing services via Essentia's wellness case management. In her own words, "Thank you for all of the love and support I receive from Essentia and their supporters. Thank you for letting me share Anna's story."
I who am dead 1,000 years and wrote this sweet archaic song, send you my words for messengers, the way I shall not pass along. I care not if you bridge the seas, or ride secure the cruel sky, or build consummate palaces of metal or of masonry. But have you wine and music still, and statues and a bright-eyed love, and foolish thoughts of good and ill, and prayers to them who sit above? How shall we conquer? Like a wind that falls at eve, our fancies blow. And old Maeonides the blind said it 3,000 years ago. Oh, friend unseen, unborn, unknown, student of our sweet English tongue, read out my words at night alone. I was a poet, I was young. Since I can never see your face and never shake you by the hand, I send my soul through time time and space to greet you. You will understand.
Thank you, Michael and Stuart. Michael and Stuart worked that up for me this week, so really appreciate this morning. Right? Let us join in the spirit of prayer, meditation, reflection. Let us ground our bodies and open our spirits to these words from the Reverend Laura Martin. There are things I have loved from afar. The portrait of a moon who has been telling a story for a long time. The horizon line extending out on a day when my bare arms shiver. And there are things I have loved from close up. The small dog who comes into my lap, the full cup I get to lift for you. The way my hand holds yours as we pray together. When the outcome is already decided. Love is that which knows its purpose and holds to it from afar and from right here. Amen. It's the video, guys.
Joni, will you sing us a couple more?
What's that?
Will you sing us a couple more, Joni?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll do this one.
All right.
Okay. Rose and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. And they rain and they snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions that I recall. I really don't know clouds. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. No, don't give yourself away. Oh, I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions that I recall. I really don't know love. I really don't know love at all. I don't know love at all.
Tears and fears and feeling proud
To say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way. But now old friends are acting strange, and they shake their heads and they tell me that I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained
Tell him, Joni.
in living every day.
Living every day.
I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life. I really don't know life at all.
How does everybody feel about
I can't watch that without crying. If you haven't seen all of the videos from that concert, I really encourage you. And what I love the most is her laugh at the very end. So I'm going to start with a reading from the book, The Fourth Turning, What the Cycles of History Tell Us About America's Next Rendezvous with Destiny, by William Strauss and Neil Howe. They say the great achievement of linear time has been to endow humankind with a purposeful confidence in its own self-improvement. A linear society defines explicit moral goals, justice, equality, or material goals, comfort, abundance, and then sets out deliberately to attain them. When those goals are reached, people feel triumphant. When they aren't, new tactics are applied. Either way, the journey never repeats. Each act is original, granting a sense of authentic creativity unknown to those who reenact the past. In America, as Mark Twain observed, nothing is older than our habit of calling everything new. And they continue, yet the great weakness of linear time is that it obliterates time's recurrence, and thus cuts people off from the eternal, whether in nature, in each other, or in ourselves. When we deem our social destiny entirely self-directed and our personal lives self-made, we lose any sense of participating in a collective myth larger than ourselves. We cannot ritually join with those who come before or after us, situating us at some intermediate moment, eons away from both the beginning and the end of history. Linear time leaves us alone, restless, afraid to stand still lest we discover something horrible about ourselves. Most Americans would agree with Mary McCarthy that the happy ending is our national belief. But few of us have any idea what we would do if we ever got there. When I was in college, I had 4 majors. I began with government and then went to history and then to psychology, and I finally settled on English because that's what I had the most hours in. And it turns out that this kind of peripatetic journey through the liberal arts was actually an excellent preparation for the ministry, which I had no idea of at the time. But the problem with it was that it left little room for other courses that were actually part of the requirements for graduation. And what I was missing were the sciences. It wasn't that I didn't like science or wasn't interested in it. I just didn't want to get bogged down in things that were excessively technical, that would take time to learn. So I suddenly hit upon the idea of studying astronomy. Who wouldn't want to learn about the stars and the planets and the galaxies? It turned out that I didn't. From the first few classes, I found myself completely overwhelmed. It became abundantly clear to me that my life was the merest speck in the context of the billions of years of planetary development. And at that point, I was bound and determined, like in the reading, to make my mark upon the world. And this perspective made this ambition just seem ludicrous. The youthful egoist in me just couldn't tolerate it, so I dropped the course. This anxiety only increased early in my ministry at a church that I once served. It was the practice of the minister would offer a sermon topic as part of the church auction. People would bid on the chance to tell me what to preach about. And this particular year, the person who won the auction asked me to preach about the spiritual implications of the Hubble telescope. I begged her to change the topic, and I even offered to reimburse her bid, because what could I possibly say about the Hubble telescope? But with maturity comes at least a little bit of wisdom and new perspective. Many years later, I find myself suddenly fascinated with the newly published output of the James Webb Telescope. It must be noted that there are quite legitimate protests of naming this telescope after James Webb, given his persecution of LGBTQ people at NASA. So I'll just refer to it as the JWST. Not only are these images stunningly gorgeous, they paint a portrait of a universe and its evolution that indeed does dwarf this moment in time in which we find ourselves. And I realize that now I find that kind of assuring. This too shall pass, seems to be the message of this that I cling to. Our own Peter Eisenhart has been at the forefront of this work at the helm of the predecessor of the JWST, the Spitzer, in a really fascinating book that he co-wrote with Michael Werner. They ask the questions that are at the core of our fascination with the heavens. Where did we come from? How did the universe evolve? Are we alone? Deeply spiritual questions. His work and this new work of the JWST, which coincidentally has been led by Jane Rigby, who used to attend Neighborhood Church, takes us even further down in the quest, further along in the quest for answers to those very important questions. It allows us to see in greater detail signs of the same elements that created this Earth and other planets. And I'm really hopeful that there are other beings out there and that they manage to work with their planets better than we have ours. But again, it helps me to think about the larger vision that this gives us. It makes me think of another set of theories that gives me similar comfort, that of the generational evolution as outlined by Strauss and Howe that I first read. Thank you, guys. You can stop the slides. Thinking about the future right now feels very scary if we stay in this present moment, if we stay in this Western fallacy of linear thinking. The idea that the crisis we are experiencing will just continue ad infinitum is absolutely terrifying. But if Strauss and Howe are right, and I do think they are, this is unlikely to happen. We are due for what they call the next turning. It's a complicated set of theories, but essentially they posit that we go through an endless cycle of the same pattern, seasons, or secula, as they call them, that approximate about a quarter century, seasons of growth, of maturation, of entropy, and destruction. It's not that they think that we do the same things over and over, but that our patterns of behavior are similar over the centuries. We go through a high when the social order seems to come together for the common good, and then move into an awakening, a kind of passionate era of spiritual upheaval, which then unfortunately leads to an unraveling in which our civic order decays and material values come to the fore, resulting then in a crisis in which value systems war with one another to try to dictate the next phase. When we think about the last century, it makes a kind of sense. The so-called greatest generation created a sense of order and self-sacrifice, which then led to the spiritual awakening of the 60s, in which all order was questioned, which then devolved into the material cynicism of the 80s, and then into the crisis that we have been experiencing for the last 20 years or so. If history were linear, we would be stuck in an endless wave of tie-dye and Woodstock. But we're not. despite the tie-dye that is within us. At the beginning of our current crisis in 1997, they wrote this: "History is seasonal, and winter is coming. Like nature's winter, the secular winter can come early or late. A fourth turning can be long and difficult, brief but severe, or perhaps mild, but like winter, it cannot be averted. Here, in summary, is what the rhythms of modern history warn about America's future. They say the next fourth turning is due to begin shortly after the new millennium, right? Is that when it began? A sudden spark will catalyze a crisis mood. Remnants of the old social order will disintegrate. Political and economic trust will implode. Real hardship will beset the land with severe distress that could involve questions of class, race, nation, and empire. Yet this time of trouble will bring seeds of social rebirth. Americans will share a regret about recent mistakes and a resolute new consensus about what to do. The very survival of the nation will feel at stake. Sometime before the year 2025, America will pass through a great gate in history." They wrote that in 1997. And from their mouths to God's ears. We've clearly got only 2 years to get our act together, so it's time to get busy. Of course, it's not as precise as that, but it is reassuring to me to hope that our crisis cannot go on forever. The question is, what will we do to shape this next phase? Unfortunately, conservatives such as Steve Bannon have gotten hold of this theory and twisted it to their own agenda. But it is not that deterministic. And the attributes of the rising generations are the opposite of the Steve Bannons of the world, thank goodness. We can learn from previous generations and find those values we want to celebrate. I think that's why I love that video of Joni Mitchell and Brandi Carlile so much. We can, in fact, look to the past for inspiration. We can sustain ourselves with a new understanding of what is eternal within all these vicissitudes of change. There's a lovely short story by the science fiction writer Kim Stanley Robinson. Have any of you read Kim Stanley Robinson? He was new to me. It's called The History of the 20th Century with Illustrations. In it, he tells the story of a historian that he calls Frank Churchill, who is charged with writing the history of the 20th century. And as he delves into the history of that century, he just gets more and more depressed. He was overwhelmed by how war and its losses dominated. 20 million dead in World War I, 50 million dead in World War II. Small wars claimed 350,000 a year, year after year. The Cold War era was estimated to have killed 15 to 20 million people. He comes across a similar book that was written in 1902 by someone who was trying to chronicle the 19th century in the same way that he is trying to do. But that writer, despite relating similar kinds of losses, wrote this at the end: "I believe that man is good. I believe that we stand on the dawn of a century that will be more peaceful and prosperous than any in history." So reading this, knowing what he knows about the 20th century, Frank just scoffs. He does come to one conclusion. The obvious thing to do was to give over the running of the world to women. He said, let the men care for the children for 5,000 years, or 50,000, one for every year of murderous patriarchy. But as he keeps encountering one human evil after another, he sinks into despair. He decides to leave his project behind for the time being and travels up to Scotland. And as he journeys through the land, he ends up visiting ancient sites of previous civilizations. He comes across an immense Viking tomb with extraordinary drawings etched into the walls. At some point in the 12th century, Norse sailors broke into this tomb and added some graffiti. One aspirational sentiment was, "Happy is he who finds great treasure." Less uplifting was, "Ingrid is the most beautiful woman in the world." Some things never change. And then he encountered Stone Age homes, 5,000 years old, yet so familiar. The same needs, the same thinking, the same solutions. And he found himself on the edge of a windblown cliff looking at the same view that those Norse sailors, that those Viking warriors, that those Stone Age inhabitants had all looked at. He began to feel a part of something much more immense and much more indelibly human. Generations and generations of people experiencing the same longings, the same griefs, the same daily habits of unremarkable life. And then he sits down in the midst of the gale and rips out all of the pages that he had already written about the human devastation wrought in the 20th century. And with the few pages left in his notebook, he sat down and wrote with a quivering hand, "I believe that man is good. I believe that we stand on the dawn of a century that will be more peaceful and prosperous than any in history." Galaxies expand and contract. Age by age, we humans inhabit the same dreams and the same griefs. The cycles of the generation unfold before us. We confront the cycles of our own lives and ask what the next cycle is that we want to live into. Despair is always on the horizon, and yet we cannot give in to despair. As Alice Walker wrote in Anything We Love Can Be Saved, how does the heart keep beating? How does the spirit go on? Like my mother, she says, who seemed to switch over to another mode of coping after her body failed her so that she remained radiant, even though she couldn't move. I felt after a time of dimness and exhaustion from what seemed like utter meanness of spirit, racism, sexism, homophobia, hypocrisy, and craziness, I still felt lifted up by an inner spiritual reserve that I hadn't been sure I had. The assurance that life is grand no matter what, that suffering has a use. It helps push away the old skin, surely not empathically flexible enough, still clinging to our ankles. That I and all that I love are inseparable forever. And that I deeply love courage and creativity and the boldness to try something new. That even to attempt to respectfully encounter the other is a sacred act and leads to and through the labyrinth, to the river, possibly to healing, a special effect of the soul. Can this larger view help us find this special effect of the soul? Can we still reaffirm a belief in the inherent goodness of human nature, even when it is not always manifest? Can we connect to the generations to come and the generations now gone and know that all we love is inseparable. With this hope and with this aspiration, I pray that we can. Amen.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 1057 in your teal hymnal, Go Lifted Up.
The benediction is from Little Gidding of Four Quartets by T.S. Eliot. We shall not cease from exploration, and at the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown remembered gate, when the last of earth left to discover is that which was the beginning. At the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard in the stillness between two waves of the sea. Quick now, here, now, always. A condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flame are enfolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. Amen. Go in peace.